Are you even pulling? Are you on my team? Just represent, pull. All right, let's go. Come on, Cap.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Untitled Marvel Project, and remember to watch your language with this episode because we are of course talking about Avengers Age of Ultron. I'm your host Tanner Dykstra, joined as always by my beautiful compatriots and co-hosts Tucker Hazel and Abram Buhner. We are here to talk about Joss Whedon's 2015 film, Avengers Age of Ultron. But before we get into it, I want you to subscribe to Backlog Banter. I want you to like this video. I want you to join the Discord. That link is in the description. There, you can talk about all sorts of things with us. You can talk about movies. You can talk about video games. You can talk about, I don't know, TV shows. Just don't tag Tucker Hazel. You can talk about basically anything that you'd like. And you can communicate with us directly. Your favorite people on the entirety of YouTube.
Absolutely.
The only ones that have come up with the idea to rank and review every single MCU TV show and film.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Without further ado, let's get into Age of Ultron. Who would like to start?
I wouldn't.
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'll spin a yarn about Avengers: Age of Ultron. This is it's actually, I would say it's a peculiar film, but it really isn't. It's like, hey, you know how the Avengers movie kind of changed the face of cinema and made a gazillion dollars and is universally loved? We should do that again. And you know what? Sure as shit, they tried. They brought together all those actors. They brought together a lot of other actors, and they sure put them in a superhero movie. And this is a film that intrigues me because for me, it feels like the most out of the MCU, like the MCU. Except for maybe Thor: The Dark World, which we fucking shat upon a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
Jesus,
a long time ago.
Feels the most like the MCU just stalling. It's like, hey, we need an entry with these characters out, and we're gonna develop their character arcs and their relationships. But is it gonna be incredibly insightful? Is it gonna bring a lot to the table? Not really. Like there's gonna be some action sequences and some conversations, and have a good time. But because of that, I don't think it's egregiously terrible. I have a fun time watching it. It's got some memorable moments. It's got some character stuff that I'm a fan of. It introduces some concepts that I enjoy. But on the whole, it just kind of feels like, they did an Avengers movie, didn't they?
Yeah. It is really just a spinning the wheels of the MCU. I think I referred to it when I watched it 2 years ago, and I logged and reviewed this film on Letterboxd.com. Follow me, Tanner_Dykstra on Letterboxd.com. I think I called it a stepping stone and not much more.
Sure.
And I think that's really what it is. Because what we have here, we're smack dab in the middle of Phase 2, and we're like, okay, we have a set path. We're coming out of Guardians with the Infinity Stones thing. We got a set path for where this thing's going. I am Kevin Feige. I know where these characters are going to go by the end of this saga. We got to set up for Infinity War. We got to set up for Civil War. We got to set up Thor for Thor Ragnarok. We got to get Hulk off in space for Thor Ragnarok. We got to set up all these little chess pieces all over the goddamn board. And it does that.
Yeah.
But
it leads to a number of way more interesting and better films.
It does. And in the process of doing all that and setting up all these chess pieces, it forgets to make itself useful as a film. Like I guess not useful because I just described how it is useful as a cog in the larger MCU machine, but it's not a very interesting cog. It's not a very shiny cog. It's just it's very basic cog. There's not even that many like little spindles on it to lock in.
And what's your favorite kind of cog? What makes it shiny is specifically interesting.
Well, you gotta shine it up a little bit. You gotta shine it up with, like, I don't know, interesting villain.
I was talking about like physical cogs. I don't care about the movie.
Okay, let's just talk about
cog banter. Here we are, boys. Let's fucking go.
We'll make that a Patreon show. But yeah, those are my basic thoughts. Is that this sets up things, but as a film unto itself, not very good. Is what I'm gonna land on this.
I'm really interested by this because I like this movie quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
I think Age of Ultron's a lot of fun, and really I don't have a lot of opening thoughts. I suppose I really have a question for you guys. And what more did you really want out of this movie? Because ultimately, I feel like I got what I was looking for the most part. I will say, and I actually have a little bit more to say before you answer the question.
All right.
First of all, I don't like Joss Whedon. Fuck Joss Whedon for a number of different reasons.
Of course,
apparently not a very good gentleman. Also,
no.
The Justice cut is probably my least favorite movie of all time.
Nice.
So I gotta wag my finger at that. But
You
I
had
also
your whole ass fist.
Yes.
I have to give him some props because there's actually as I said, quite a lot of Age of Ultron that I like. There are also some really egregious moments. I think I said in the Discord, I think that the Natasha Bruce stuff is basically insufferable. I really hate a lot of the messaging and that just general dynamic in general. But on the whole, we're introduced to some new characters. We get, I think, some quite compelling and visually exciting action sequences. We get, I think, a lot of great character moments. Maybe they don't build towards anything and beyond maybe Tony Stark. I like the relationship we kind of saw there for Civil War, obviously. But I'm quite compelled by just watching the Avengers at a party or watching them show up to Clint's farmhouse.
Absolutely.
I think that this movie succeeds in those small character moments, but I also think it succeeds in moving the MCU forward. So for me, I really don't understand what more, aside from the key issues that we'll discuss, the banner stuff, maybe some villain things. I don't really know what more you could have wanted at Age of Ultron.
Well, here's the thing, and I agree with you. I like the Avengers party. The Avengers Tower party. I like the Hawkeye farm thing. But like those are the shiny moments that are. They work well for the character aspects of this, but like what I'm talking about is the movie as a whole. I'm talking about we're using the Age of Ultron title here. We're introducing the villain Ultron and what it means for these characters. And I guess, it builds upon this idea of Tony Stark, putting a suit of armor around the world, taking the charge, and like he wants to end the whole thing of like ending the fight is key to both Tony Stark and Cap's character arcs. And Tony Stark wants to, he wants to end the fight by taking charge, and we're gonna make an Ultron, and we're gonna stop any future threats from coming at us. Okay, we're fighting the war before
I believe
it happens.
that's the line.
Yeah,
He wants to finish the fight.
Yeah, he wants to finish.
That's what I was.
Anyway, so you have that. You have that for.
He'll understand when he's older.
You have that for Tony's character, right? But like, I think there's just all these tangential things that you can't even call tangential because they make up a majority of the movie. The Sokovia thing only leads into Civil War, and it's not that engaging within itself. The whole concept of Ultron as a villain is, whatever. I really don't care for Ultron and all these things. That's what I'm talking about. Like these character moments are great, but I just feel like it's an issue that they have to exist within this movie that is largely a stepping stone.
Yeah, I think for me, this is a film that we've discussed that it's identity as a stepping stone. I think is my biggest issue with this film. I don't think it makes it bad. Maybe I was a little too egregious in my opening statements, but Abram, I do agree with you. I enjoy this movie on the whole, and I think why it works for me is it is fun for ostensibly the only time in the MCU to see the Avengers working together as an established team. And that's the identity that this movie has.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think that identity has kind of gotten lost in the shuffle of other movies that have stronger identities. This movie exists as the bridge between other things. This is them existing and having a good time together. But then you get to Civil War. It's like, oh, that's a more interesting conflict. You get to how it leads to Infinity War. You lead into Thor Ragnarok. Okay, that movie has a stronger identity. Like, how this movie exists is to set up things like Vision and the twins, which I think are the aspects of this movie that I'm the most compelled by, but not because they're the greatest in this movie, but because they are now established so you can use them later on. And same with Ultron. I mean, that really never comes up again. And not necessarily that it has to, but he feels like fodder. And I think Ultron is maybe the reason why this movie doesn't work to the way that it should, is the villain Ultron is pretty much the ultimate villain of the Avengers in the comics. I mean, there's multiple timelines where he takes over the fucking world. He's killed a number of these characters in the comics, at least. But in this, he feels like robot guy, bad, and he has a lot of grunts that are also him. And that's about it. And because of that, he feels like a shaky foundation to set a lot of interesting character stuff on. But I'm only compelled by this movie when you're taken out of the plot, ostensibly, that revolves around Ultron. When you're worrying about the impact of these things or the impact on the characters, yes, I'm all in. But I do feel like they do spend a little too much time on the plot, but
Yeah.
on the things that are weak. And some of those action sequences with Ultron, I just don't think hold up. And especially with the character of Ultron are not on the level of any of the villains in the other like core MCU movies.
Yeah. I think, Abram, I think what you're asking, earlier you asked, what would we have preferred this film to be? And that's an interesting question, because you want to maintain and you want to retain all of these things, these character things, of like seeing the Avengers work together. They're doing, to use a Tucker Hazel word, they're doing wombo combos when they're in fights and stuff like that.
When the
And
fuck did I say that? That's not. I didn't come up with that.
no, well, you're the only person I hear say those words
That's
in
a very
conjunction with
famous
one
Smash Brothers video from like
Yeah.
15 years ago.
another. I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
I don't
Keep
care.
talking.
You want to see them like go to Clint's house and meet his family, and you want to see them have the little party at Avengers Tower and stuff like that, and work together in the scenarios as the core Avengers team doing core Avengers team stuff. But that's hard to do in the sort of summer event blockbuster movie formula that the MCU has set up, wherein each movie has to be a huge deal, and that's why you get like things like Civil War, where we break up the team, and things like Infinity War, where it's the beginning of the end.
Where
And
most
it's
of them
hard,
die.
yeah, exactly. Where it's hard to create a film where it's just the Avengers hanging out and doing Avengers missions, like an issue of a comic book, essentially. It's hard to make that sort of thing an appealing big summer event blockbuster. You want to attach the Age of Ultron sort of big event title to it when it just doesn't live up to that. And
Yeah,
it does,
exactly.
and it shouldn't have to in a lot of ways. I really wish that we could put out an Avengers movie where they're just going through Hydra bases and they're doing things like that, but that's just not how, that's just not the sort of formula that the MCU has set up for their movie releases.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna look behind me and be on fucking Ashton Kutcher's Punked or something to make a topical
wow.
reference, because I don't understand. I suppose because I think about it this way, right? What was our criticism of or one of our criticisms of Multiverse Madness just a couple weeks ago, that it was not substantial enough as a piece of the MCU. I think this movie is so substantial. But by the time that film ends, we are in the Avengers compound and we've got a brand new team. We have basically brought in, maybe it's a little bit contrived, but we have brought Cap and Iron Man to a head to confront each other. We've introduced new characters. We've furthered these relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We've established Thanos as being on the cusp of going after the Infinity Stones. I mean, that is big. Those are big plot moments that happen here, and we always go back to this example, or I always go back to this example, because it's not fucking opening up files on Batman's computer and seeing Justice League numbers.
Yeah,
these things are motivated in the plot about Ultron, and we're directly building upon things that have just happened with the fall of Shield and the battle for New York that motivate the two different sides we have here in Cap, who's like, we can't try to stop a war before it starts, and Tony is like, this is the only fucking way. I think this movie, you say it's a stepping stone. I think that there is, in the context of a universe that is built on being interconnected, there's a lot of skill in making a stepping stone that so cleanly pulls this plot thread from over here and this plot thread and ties them together so you can walk along them.
What I'm saying is that I agree with you. I do. Those are the things that I enjoy about this film. But let's just talk about Ultron, okay? Because I feel like we're dancing around this point, because he's the antagonist. He is the impetus for all the events of this film, essentially. That they are fighting against Ultron. Okay. First of all, just starting out, I don't like James Spader's Ultron. I think
he's
that
not scary.
No, he's not scary. They try to make him like the Tony Stark, but a villain, but he just doesn't do what RDJ can do. Like, he tries to have these witticisms that he just talks in like
don't really land.
Yeah, he just talks in like platitudes and in like cliches, essentially. I wrote down a number of my least favorites.
Thank you, Tanner. I actually really appreciate this.
At the end of his first confrontation in Avengers Tower, at the end of it, he says, "That was dramatic. Thanks." When he forgets the word children, what is that? Why does that happen? Is that supposed to be funny? Like, he's like,
it certainly is.
They make little people, children. Oh, I lost the word there. His whole motivation is the tired and cliche. We make a supercomputer, and he wants to save humanity by wiping out humanity. It's a cliche. It's been done a million times before, and will be done a million times after. Let's see. You shut me out. You think I care? That's just a line that I don't like.
It's not an egregious line. It's just kind of
No.
lame.
The problem with the
the
script.
other one is you, the Avengers, you are my meteor. The Earth will crack under your failure. Like, it's just a lot of these, like, a showy, platitude-y, cliche lines.
Here's the thing. The film has major scripting issues, as I alluded to before we even started recording. I think that there are a number of bad dialogue exchanges within the Avengers. It goes far beyond Ultron.
Yeah.
I pin that as a larger issue opposed to just a villain issue.
Yeah.
But I think that when we start to worry about a cliche or like a MacGuffin motivating a plot of a superhero movie, I think we have to be careful, because then I think ultimately they basically all crumble if the originality of your villain's motivation becomes the metric for the success of these movies.
Okay.
Sure.
I think here's the thing with Ultron. He looks like a turtle out of a shell.
He looks weird.
I don't
The
think
design is not good.
no. I think Ultron is better when he's like a fucked up Ultron, or like one of those shambly guys.
Yeah.
But like beefcake turtle Ultron is
With
not scary.
teeth, what about his teeth and lips? Do you like his robot teeth and lips?
I'm not a fan of that, Tanner. But here's the thing. It goes
Yeah.
back to what I was saying before. Ultron is just a fucking football being passed around for me effectively. And if you see through that transparently, I think that's totally fair. But nonetheless, the success of basically all these movies is not the invention of the plot. It's the plot as it's affected by superhero characters. And ultimately, Ultron is just this catalyst between Cap and Tony. And I find that to be compelling. I find the moments of, oh shit, we've got Vision's body here, and now all of a sudden Tony's going to try to fuck with it again.
Yeah.
And then everybody comes in and we have to have a mini Civil War scuffle right there in that science room. These moments are interesting, and these moments are facilitated by Ultron. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Ultron is a scary villain, that Ultron has the best writing, because this movie doesn't have the best writing. But I do think that what it motivates out of these characters is pretty compelling. And it leads to fun action sequences that I want to talk about. But that's what I have to say about Ultron.
Here's the thing, Abram. You're helping me catalyze some of my issues with this movie, but also like justify my enjoyment of it, because as I said at the beginning, I feel like this is kind of the MCU operating at a low hum on a creativity standpoint. But I do think that I still absolutely do enjoy it, because I do think, and I think we should focus in on more specific moments, elements of the film that we like, instead of just talking in these general poods. But the fact that we are able to get a movie that for me does feel like it exists to set up other things, but kind of makes all those other movies better for it. Like, if we had to set up Vision and Wanda to get to Civil War, like in Civil War, oh fuck, that movie would have been a mess. Like, if we had to explain why Thor and Hulk were off in space to in Ragnarok, good lord, that would have been too much. I think this movie does work as a connection piece, and it is a core piece of tissue of the MCU. Like, you can't take this out and then not have Civil War work as well, and not have the progression of all the other movies that we've mentioned work as well. And I think you're right. It is we have developed a story in the MCU that we love, because it has these interconnected stories that are told over long periods of time. And I think maybe the reason that this one just doesn't stand out to me, which is really its biggest issue, doesn't stand out to me, is because I think it is outshone by all the other ones. You talk about Avengers, which clear identities, setting up the team. You talk about Infinity War, which is clearly, destroying the team. And of course, Endgame, bringing everything together. This is the one that I think sticks out a little bit, because it is that middle bar connecting to other things, but I don't necessarily think that makes it bad. And maybe I'm going to start raising my opinions on this, because everything you're saying I do agree with. I'm gonna have to wrestle with this in my sleep tonight. Over the next few days, I'll ruminate.
Okay,
and I'll come back.
here's the less generalities thing I will say, because this kind of leads into talking about specifics.
There's nothing wrong with generalities, by the way. I'm going to lose my fucking mind. We're talking about the villain and the purpose of the
exactly.
movie.
I know. I'm always one to say like, oh hey, what were you guys' favorite specific moments? We have to jam that in right at the end. But no, we're gonna get to it apparently early on in this.
There's no
video.
time. There's no rush in this review. I'm fucking drinking in this film.
All right, let's all just take a deep breath. Let's all just take a deep breath.
Check for strings on you. Make sure there's no strings on you.
God, that
the
metaphor.
Pinocchio. I took my deep breath. And I'm gonna get riled up again. The Pinocchio the parallel doesn't make any sense. Why is he Pinocchio? Well, how does that allegory make sense?
What are the strings on him? No, there's not any.
No, but the allegory makes sense. It's not a very compelling allegory. The idea is that Ultron is a sentient AI who is going to be 100% subservient to Tony Stark's desire. So in a way, he is a marionette being played by another person, which I get. But,
sure.
But Pinocchio specifically is not that.
Well, sure. Because I've never fucking. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
At a very basic level, it's an understandable metaphor. But where's Jiminy? You know, that's the question I wonder when I watch this movie.
Just say puppet. That's what you mean. You mean puppet, Joss. Don't say Pinocchio.
Does he specifically say Pinocchio?
Yeah.
No, they play a sound clip from Pinocchio.
Yes, they
remember
do.
That?
And
it's like over the fucking Sokovian base.
And There Are No Strings on Me is the song from Pinocchio.
Imagine having seen Pinocchio. But continue, Tanner.
Okay.
Last generality.
I had a train of thought, and there was a parallel train of thought running next to me that I leapt onto to go on my Pinocchio rant. But if I can wrangle back my first train of thought here.
Deep breaths all around.
Yeah, deep breaths all around. Is that in this goes into an issue of if you want to talk about if you should/can analyze MCU films in a vacuum, like this film alone, is it a good film, yada yada yada. I think that you can do that with Civil War, you can do that with Thor Ragnarok, you can do that even with Infinity War. You can say, this film on its own is compelling, and it makes me interested in the rest of these films, but it also has solid, very good merits of its own. And through lines that are solid of its own, not like scene here, scene there, character set up for this movie, character set up for that movie, which was what Age of Ultron has. Age of Ultron makes me want to watch the other better movies. I don't want to rewatch Age of Ultron. I want to rewatch the movie that Age of Ultron sets up. And I think that is the issue.
See, I agree with you, Tanner, but I agree with the difference. Actually, I'm not even sure I agree with you. I just like using that phrase. Here's what I have to say about the matter.
Okay.
I think that our, at least in my opinion, this movie, I'll put it this way, as to not put words in your mouth. My opinion on this movie was certainly colored by the fact that the last two MCU movies I've watched have been Multiverse of Madness and Guardians of the Galaxy, which are very much driven by the creator behind them.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Joss Whedon, for as much shit as I give him and as much shit as he deserves, is a talented man who, when given a plan, he can execute. And I think he executed here on what is perhaps the epitome of that first Marvel Phase 1, Phase 2 formula. This is Marvel formula, I think.
Sure. I agree.
Where does a director's hand shine through? It doesn't really. It is about, Tanner, and I think you make the interesting point of, does it exist on its own merits, or does it exist as part of the larger storytelling? This, to me, is basically the archetype for the interconnected Marvel storytelling.
Yeah.
Because I do think that it has merits of its own, but they're merits in moments. They're merits in the scenes, in the party, in Clint's fucking place, in the action sequences, as I want to talk about when we get to specifics, because God forbid we didn't talk about individual moments of the movie.
Oh God.
But I agree with you. Is it as stylistically or creatively sound as Thor Ragnarok, directed by Taika Waititi? No. Yeah. Right? But Joss Whedon's not here to make that kind of movie. And I think I've become more comfortable as we get more movies that have a creative vision. In Eternals, which is boring, but nonetheless very creatively motivated, or Multiverse of Madness, or Guardians of the Galaxy.
Movie.
Yeah.
Like, the MCU is at a point where it's allowing these voices and stories to flourish. So when I come back to Age of Ultron, because ultimately this is a retrospective series,
Yeah.
I enjoy it because it is that formula, because I can see the pieces very carefully moved around the chessboard, and I can enjoy the moments that stitch those together. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that being the intention and the execution of the movie.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't think so on paper. I don't think that is an issue. I just think
Sure.
the execution is a little bit lacking. Like, I wish there was more substance to like the villain of the story about that then, because it
Yeah.
still has to exist as a movie as well.
But this, I mean, okay,
Okay,
I think we'll
yeah.
have to talk about specifics.
Yeah,
or
we have to agree to
Right.
disagree there.
Right, we're circling the drain, but also Infinity War is half of a movie and it doesn't stand on its own. Let's
Okay.
talk about some
Oh, right.
specific.
We'll
And
get
I
that-
love
we'll-
Infinity War. I love
We'll get
Infinity
there.
War.
We'll get there in due time. Don't
But-
you worry. What's everyone's favorite specific moment, huh?
Can we talk about least favorite specific moments actually? Because I really like
Oh,
what
God.
I liked what you were doing with the Ultron thing, and I think that was
Okay,
funny.
sure. Yeah, go for it.
So I think that Captain America looks like a fucking doofus in this movie.
Wait, his costume?
No, not his costume.
Just like Chris Evans looks.
I've never liked the chin. I mean intellectually, he seems like a doofus. The
Okay.
chins. I'm never crazy about the chin strap. I
I see.
I like seeing him in his nice button-down shirt, and
Mhm.
that's fine. But what I'm
Mhm.
talking about, and it goes back to the dialogue issue, as you're saying.
Yeah.
First of all, the language bit is not funny,
No,
and
never
it does
was.
not need to be a recurring bit across the
Okay.
film.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that wasn't pulled out to the larger MCU. That drove me
Right.
fucking bonkers.
Well,
Like I can
what-
just watch this movie, be annoyed with that, and be like, "Phew, I never have to fucking worry about that
What
again."
about what about when Nick Fury says, "Whew, you kissing mother with that mouth"? That's
It's
pretty
just-
funny.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay, my bad. My
Then-
mistake.
Then there's also the line in Sokovia, which I think is one of the worst written one-liners I've ever experienced in any movie.
Hmm.
And I remember it word for word, mostly because I finished the movie half an hour ago.
Yeah.
If you get hurt or
Walk
something,
it
if you
off.
get
If
no,
If
no,
you
no,
get
no.
killed,
Eh,
if
no,
you
no,
get
no.
killed.
If you get hurt him back.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you get killed, walk it off.
Yeah.
What does
Doesn't make
that
a lot of
mean?
sense. Yeah.
And
I-
well, hold on. I have one last point. There's an important point here.
Yes.
Nobody says, "Hey Cap, what the fuck are you talking about?" Like there's no response to that. So I have to assume that all the Avengers like,
Yeah.
here we fucking go.
Well, it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's motivational, He's
It's not
like,
motivational. It doesn't
Oh,
make
well.
sense.
Well, you understand what he means when he says, "If you get killed, walk it off." Like you do understand what that means, right?
Like be okay with your sacrifice.
No, it's literally just like it's literally just you keep fighting. Like it doesn't matter how hard we get beat down, we just keep fighting.
Yeah, I don't know if it would. I don't care if it would be generic. I'd rather him say that. And
Oh, okay, all right. Well, whatever.
I think Abrams on the same page.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I get the sentiment, but this is a multi-billion-dollar movie. I think you could probably come up with a different catch line for Cap. But that's small peanuts in comparison to my main issue of the movie, which is the Banner Natasha stuff. And if you want to
Okay.
talk specifics in this movie,
Let's talk about it.
let's get hyper specific.
Let's talk about it.
First of all, Joss Whedon gets away with the guy falling on the tits joke.
He does.
Too many times.
Oh, what a classic Joss Whedon
And it was
blunder.
never funny.
I sure wish it would happen to me. I mean, that was being Joss Whedon.
It's a terrible joke. It's unnecessarily misogynistic. It's not funny. It wasn't funny here. It's not funny in Justice League. I almost call it Justice League. That's my bad.
Whew.
But I just have a larger issue with the construction of Natasha in particular.
Mm.
I hate it's barely even an insinuation. He basically comes out and says it, that Natasha is a monster like Bruce Banner because she's sterile.
Mhm.
And that is a really weird bit of messaging.
No, I don't think that's entirely the one-to-one comparison that's intended to be drawn. I think you're supposed to piece together all the things that happened to her in the Red Room and her past and imply that
Sure.
all of this pain that she has endured, all of these different forces that have compelled her throughout her life have created someone who has trauma to the level that she has a hard time trusting herself. And she sees herself as a monster. She's killed people. She's done things. She's been tampered with. And that causes her to not be able to trust anyone, which is actually, I think, why I You haven't gotten to your specifics about their relationship, but I'm going to pre-rebut it by saying I think it works pretty well. I think that giving this chance to delve a little bit more into the psyche of both Bruce and Natasha, two characters that are intentionally divorced from other characters for a lot of their lives, and giving them a parallels to each other and saying, hey, maybe I can trust someone, maybe I can open up. And the fact that both of them, looking at this cast of characters that we have, they are the ones that trust the least people. They're the ones that have endured the most trauma and pain, and they're able to bond over that. And I think that gives them a little more wiggle room in terms of being able to be approachable and connect to the larger group dynamic. They have a bond that I think is actually pretty important in the way that Natasha is also able to connect to the Hulk, which is a character that has never had fucking Betty Ross, but has never had a relationship with any character before. I think does humanize all elements of that relationship in a way that I find compelling and fleshes out this larger group, which up to this point had been, we know how Tony's feeling, we know how Cap's feeling, we kind of know how Thor's feeling, he's kind of a bag of meat, but now we really know how Bruce and Natasha are connected to this group.
That's actually a good point. I agree with you in large part. I think maybe my issues come down to execution again.
Sure.
Because I do think you're underplaying how direct the infertility connection is. Because not only do we see many, many flashbacks largely predicated around this final fertility, like
the graduation.
Yeah. It is when the reveal is finally motivated by a conversation around a Bruce Banner being unable to have kids, and then her revealing that she can't either, and I just find that to be really distasteful and weirdly explored.
Sure,
and it just casts a really heavy cloud over. I think what you're saying are the more compelling and understandable motivations that are between them.
Yeah. I think it's hard. I think it's also interesting to, this is colored by Joss Whedon's attitudes and behaviors towards women in real life. Right. So I also don't like that Black Widow is just made a damsel in distress at the end. Like she has to go be saved
for like 10 minutes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but regardless. And here's the thing. And this is another thing I take issue with is that I feel like this is just a hypothesis that popped into my mind. That should be Clint.
Doing the scientific method.
Because, okay, so...
Wait, say that again. What'd you say, Tanner?
It should be Clint instead of
Clint
Natasha.
should be the one that... Yeah, Clint should be taken hostage by Ultron. We get introduced the stakes of him surviving. He has the whole conversation with special guest star Linda Cardellini that he has to, that he's the one who grounds the team. He is absolutely necessary to the team. Sort of playing off all those jokes after the Avengers that what the hell is Hawkeye doing there, a guy with a bow and arrow. I think that's where Hawkeye should come into that final battle. That is the stakes of Hawkeye being there. Is we get introduced to his family. He is the common man. He represents the hope of moving beyond the fight and settling down. And so he should be the one that gets taken hostage by Ultron at the end.
Yeah.
Conversely, Captain America should be the one that has the conversation with Wanda. In that final battle. Because, if you remember, and I really like this line, at the very beginning of the film, when Kobe Smulders is debriefing Cap on here's who the twins are, here's what they come, here's their motivations, yada yada yada. And and he has the line of she's like, yeah, they volunteered to be experimented on. Can you believe it? He's like, yeah, what kind of crazy kid would let a German doctor experiment on him so they can fight for their country? He has a connection with them there. Ideologically, he does. So it would make more sense if Cap gave that motivational speech to her at the end.
Yeah.
So
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I agree with you a lot on the Natasha point. Mm-hmm. I'm less sure about the Clint point just because I think Clint is really good in the movie. I really like what he adds, and I like the idea. There is the volunteer angle, which I think this movie has script issues. I think that's what a lot of these things come down to. But I get that connection very clearly. But I also like the sort of outsider role that Clint plays and talking to Wanda as an outsider. I think that is differently compelling. Yours makes more sense in the context of what's established.
Yeah.
But I just think that Clint gets a lot of really nice moments in this movie. I'm very quickly coming around to Clint being maybe the best Avenger.
Yeah.
God, do you remember what now you're
Yeah.
you're seeing why I dressed up as him for Halloween when I was 13.
I'm not
We'll
sure
all
I
be
see
dressing up for this
that.
Halloween this year. Okay.
But I really do love his character, and let's bore in on that house scene a little bit more. I really
Sure.
love the house scene a
Me
lot.
too. No.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that fleshing out Clint
Yeah.
is for me what the most important part of this movie is. I've been a fan of Hawkeye since the beginning, and what he represents, like sort of ideologically in this world of gods and monsters, a man with a bow and a stick, but his skill can keep him up to snuff with the rest of them. I think is really interesting. But giving him essentially the most human element out of any of these crazy characters, that he has a grounded family that loves him and three children that he has to fight for, and that sort of reframes the way that you think of him back in Avengers and the way that he's putting himself on the line. I think that also proving that it is possible for these gods and monsters characters to step away from the fight and live with a grounded family is like oddly heartwarming, and the way that it's been hidden from Shield and even from the rest of the Avengers, but Natasha knows about it because they have such a close bond. And I think that might be the best part of the storytelling of this movie.
In a world of gods and monsters, I'm more compelled by Clint than a guy with a jar of Granny's peach tea. But that's a conversation for another time.
You get a double finger wag for that one.
Oh, waggle,
I just
waggle.
really like seeing. Again, it comes down. I think this movie, even if it fails to weave it all together into an internally cohesive plot, I think it strings the characters to a lot of really fun moments. Like watching all of the Avengers have to be in a regular person's house is really cool.
Yeah.
Like I love when Thor steps on that girl's
the
Lego house,
thing,
and he kicks it under the couch, and then the girl comes and she's like a fucking quarter of his height. And
I love the camera angle that they use because she is inhumanly small compared to Thor. The camera is pointed directly up at him. It's quite humorous. I enjoy that.
Yeah, it's just subtle and fun little moments like that, and then this sort of feeling. I really like when he's talking to his wife in their bedroom about just be careful, make sure the team is there for you. It kind of foregrounds the fact Clint could get totally ruined in one of these fights in a
nearly
moment.
Does.
And I think that it's
saved by Helen Cho, mother of Amadeus Cho, the totally awesome Hulk.
It's just I think it's nice for upping those stakes in an organic way and forcing other very inorganic characters to split wood or fucking look at a drawing a kid made or something. I think that's good shit.
I like when Linda Cardellini has picked up on the Natasha Bruce thing, and she's like, so how long has that been going on? He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, oh, I'll explain when you're older. Linda Cardellini, very good. Yeah. Special guest star Linda Cardellini.
Yeah,
glad she's here.
Guest star Linda Cardellini.
Yeah, of course.
The other element of this film, and I think on a parallel line, is the party scene. I think that might be my favorite part of the movie, just in terms of all the elements that it weaves together. It shows this sort of camaraderie that we haven't really gotten a chance to see elsewhere in this entire fucking saga. And I think it's really fun. And the way that it also pulls in all the side characters, this movie pulls in all the stops of all these side characters, which is a fun element this film has. But the way that we're able to see that they're still, keeping in touch with Sam and Rhodey and Maria Hill, and they're all there, and they do just sit around and share a beer. I think that watching this scene is kind of where I wish a lot more of these movies took a moment to slow down. I think I'm thinking back to my criticisms with Multiverse of Madness is there were none of these lower stakes humanizing moments in that film. It was go. And to me, that was a little bit exhausting. And when I'm watching this movie, I will get to the action. I love the Hulkbuster fight, but when we're watching all these different action sequences, I'm just waiting for it to slow down, because I think this movie does work its best when they are just sitting around a table, sharing a beer, having a laugh, and pulling in these fantastical elements of Mjolnir or Rhodey sharing War Machine stories into a normal human setting. That's what compels me most about the MCU. And these humanizing moments, especially at the party where they're having fun, are really just top notch, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, you get so many great moments in that party scene. You get the thing about Rhodey's joke falling flat with the Avengers, but then he gets all the fucking the normies around him, and he goes,
All
and
the
he does a
fucking
little,
NPCs.
yeah, he it lands, and he's like, yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
that's right, that's how it's supposed to go. You get Sam talking about like, oh, I've been looking into that thing that we were talking about with Cap, little tease for Bucky there coming in the near future. The Jane versus Pepper thing between Tony and Thor is just a lot of fun. Where they're like dueling, like who has the cooler girlfriend. That's neat. Should could have gotten both. I mean, neither of them are in this film, which I don't know if it would have improved the film that much to see them there, but sure, probably, maybe. Who's to say? What else we got? The Bruce and Natasha little flirtation thing. I mean, that's set up there, and I mean, we ragged on it for like the story reasons, but Scarlett Johansson and Mark Ruffalo are good in that, and they do have some chemistry there as actors, so I'll give them that there. And also just the Thor and Captain America drinking. They have the shot or whatever that's been aged 1,000 years, and Grindelwald's
Nutsack.
nutsack or whatever. And Stan Lee's there, and he's not meant for the taste of mortal men, and he's like, neither were the beaches in Omaha.
And he meant Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah, he meant the beaches
So
of
true.
Omaha, Nebraska, of which there are none. There are no beaches.
Yeah, I really like all of this. I just think it's quite compelling, and
Mhm.
then the little lift of Mjolnir from Cap,
Yeah.
that really, because when I watched an Endgame, I'm not sure if I ever said this on camera or not, but this is my first time watching Ultron since theaters.
Yeah.
So when he lifts a hammer or when fucking Mjolnir flies to hand, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess.
Mhm.
But fucking Kevin Feige is he, under that baseball cap of his, he stores a lot of knowledge in that head, and he's playing like 30 movies in advance, which I think is really cool. I also think that is a fun callback. That I love that Vision just fucking picks up the hammers like it's time to go.
That's good.
Because not only is it a good payoff for the joke, I think it's one of the only ways to make just basically the ultimate Deus Ex Machina moment, and just like as Deus Ex Machina as possible. Oh, we just made a guy who can beat the villain, but then making, how do we trust him? Oh, he can lift the hammer. It's kind of hokey, but I think it works. I like that. I also just forgot to say that maybe my favorite joke in the entire movie is in the farmhouse sequence. When Tony walks into the barn and goes, "Hey, dear," to the fucking tractor.
Yeah, you would think that's the funniest joke in the whole
movie. That's your favorite joke in the movie? That's a moment I was barely paying attention to.
That moment doesn't even work if you don't have subtitles on. Like if you're
it says John Deere on the tractor.
I know, I'm aware, but like it only works if you have subtitles on and you say, "Oh, it's written like deer, like the words John Deere are." I get it. Okay.
That's the kind of joke I would make, so I just really appreciate it.
I know that's why it's your favorite joke. My favorite joke, if we're just doing that, is the one that I've said a few times in our pre-recording discussion, which is if we get through this, I'll handle your own.
It doesn't really make sense.
But it's funny. It's funny though, and that's why it works.
Does that mean it's canonical to the MCU that Tony jerked off War Machine when this was over?
Tony and Rhodey have explored each other's bodies. Yes,
absolutely. I think that's absolutely true.
Do they play hide the zucchini?
They do play hide the zucchini together, of course. Oh boy, we should get off this point. What's another? Tucker, what's your favorite? Action. Okay, all right.
I just finished his line.
Tucker, what's your favorite action sequence in this film? I think I know the answer.
You know the answer because I mentioned it earlier in this review, approximately 5 minutes ago. Yeah. It's certainly the Hulkbuster sequence. I think that is the most compelling action-wise part of this movie in terms of how it shows the scale and complexity of what would it be like if the Hulk went on a rampage, and that the Avengers have Tony and Bruce have a system in place to stop it. And also, just holy shit, the CGI and the choreography of that whole fight are so impressive. Like, I really do think it's one of the unappreciated fights of the MCU.
Yeah. Sitting here on the day that the first trailer for She-Hulk dropped and looking at how that looks and looking how Hulk looked back in 2015, oh boy, there's a little budgetary difference there, I suppose.
I like the Hulkbuster fight. I put in the Discord Hulk versus Hulkbuster director Zack Snyder,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it is very Man of Steel-y to me.
Sure.
And I very quickly on, I was like, okay, this movie is just CGI horse shit for the action
Mhm.
sequences. And if you just tune your brain to that frequency, I think there's actually quite a number of interesting action sequences here, and Hulkbuster is one of them. It might maybe goes on a little too long. Maybe
Yeah.
you could have edited it and cut that down a little bit more, but it is fun.
That applies to this whole movie. Let's just say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But when I think of the action sequences, I think of how fucking cool the wombo combos are.
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever been better than this. I mean,
I mean,
I don't know. I disagree, but that's okay.
I do like that this is our second step in the Avengers series, and we are seeing them reuse moves that they discovered in the first one, like the Cap shield and Thor's hammer thing being used to send like a shockwave out. That's dope. That's cool. Cool to see.
that's really fun. I love like just fucking throwing. One member throws Cap his shield, and Cap whips the shield. Like the Ultron robots are the ultimate. Just let's have something for these guys to fucking hit. But it is cool watching them hit them. It's cool watching. It's cool watching Hawkeye, like arrow for arrow, pulling out 12 arrows, like 2 between each of his fingers, knocking them all, firing those at once. Seeing him in that first fight against those first 3 Ultron robots, go, hey Cap. He slides down the fucking thing, grabs the shield. Cap grabs it midair and does like a fucking 270-degree discus maneuver in the air to throw the shield. Like it's good shit.
Yeah,
it's really fun watching them fight together.
I absolutely think that it's those core moments that I find very compelling, and I think it's the consistency of them that's both a strength and maybe a little bit of a weakness to me. Is there aren't very many of those moments that for me stick out as much as watching Iron Man blast off Cap's shield for the first time in the first Avengers movie, or watching Thor's hammer come down on Cap's shield. Like those are the wombo combo moments that stick out to me in the MCU, or even Endgame, Thor charging up Iron Man as he shoots out all the shit. Fucking awesome. But like the consistency and the fact they are utilized so consistently throughout all these action sequences is a huge strong suit of this movie. It works in tandem with the storytelling, showing how the team has grown since then and learned to adapt to one another's strengths and weaknesses. I think that is very cool. But I think for me, the reason the action sequences on the whole don't stick out, except for the Hulkbuster fight, is because conceptually, I don't think many of them are particularly compelling. The Sokovia fight is like half of this fucking movie, and it is, I think, it has a cool idea conceptually, but in execution it doesn't really feel like it means that much. I think back to certain fights that are smaller scale but more specific, particularly in Homecoming with the boat fight or the action sequence on the Washington Monument. Those are the action sequences that stand out to me, but a lot of these are just large scale chase fights, make sure all the Ultron robots, which are just coming out of every which hole, get down. And to me, that feels a little bit like action fodder, CGI horseshit, which I do feel out of a few MCU fights. But this movie for me is kind of the peak of, let's just have a lot of these big, crazy action sequences where people are going everywhere and there's a lot of bad guys to take down. Wow.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Tucker. I agree with you basically on every mark there, because I think I think it comes back to a story issue that you can say that this MCU movie doesn't have stakes because the characters aren't going to die because they got to show up in the next movie or whatever. But I think it really falls through the floor here, except for Quicksilver, which we haven't even mentioned him by name until this point because he's so forgettable and useless in this movie.
I think I might have said twins earlier.
You did say twins. But
I think implies his existence.
Yeah. I think outside of the Hulkbuster fight, which is cool because you get to see the Hulkbuster armor and all the Hulk rampage, and he's smashing Hulk through a skyscraper that he just bought. All those other action sequences are fine. They operate on like a low hum. I think Tucker equated this movie to earlier. Just because I think it is a story issue that okay, so we gotta get all the Ultron bots because the Ultron bots have the Ultron in them, and we gotta play the keep away game because the meteor is gonna smash into Earth and do an extinction. And what I think it's also a scale problem that when you're doing the whole entire world is at stake, it doesn't feel as personal. And I think that is a failing when we're talking about a movie that succeeds in its personal character moments. So.
I mean, I just think that the character moments that motivate the action. Then, like what more? Here's the way I think about it. Right. First of all, I like the Sokovia fight.
I do too. I think
because it's fucking Days Gone. It's the fucking horde of freakers in Days Gone. There's so many of them. That's cool. I think there's a base level coolness here that works for me when you're watching the Avengers fight. And it's not, and it'd be one thing if the movie was bland character moments and then just a bunch of clusterfuck CGI. But it's compelling character moments into these fight sequences. And I think that these are a lot more technically impressive than a lot of Marvel action scenes we get because they are not cut to shit. Well, you can see so much. You can see so much more action unfold here. Like I think about when we're going after the Hydra base at the beginning. It's done on computer, so it's not as impressive, but it's like a simulated one shot as you're watching them all fight and move past each other and everything. It's not fucking cap goes here, camera cuts to ba-ba-da-ba-da, or you're fighting on the undisclosed oil rig on the undisclosed African coast. Yes. And you see a wide shot of Black Widow do the leg kick maneuver and get a guy down. This isn't revolutionary stuff, but I think that there is a higher degree of visual clarity to these fight sequences than a lot of fight sequences we get out of Marvel. Like as much as I love Infinity War, when you get to Wakanda, it's a fucking slurry of CGI nonsense. This movie is also CGI nonsense, but there is something to be said for how often they slow things down and make the camera move and follow the action. Because then you got the two big money shots, as I believe they're referred to. Yeah. You got like that 360 panorama around the fucking control point in Sokovia, which is cool. But then also obviously the splash page spread of them jumping at the beginning of the film. I think that there are moments of well orchestrated action here that to me is on the top tier of Marvel action as someone who usually does not like Marvel action all that much.
Yeah. I do have a few other things. Well, we brought up Quicksilver. I don't like Quicksilver either. I like him a little bit more. He falls above Ultron on my characters that I dislike in this movie. But he's just not that interesting. His costume sucks. His powers aren't visually interesting or particularly useful to the film. This film really suffers for coming out a year after Days of Future Past when they do Quicksilver super, super well. And they're like, I don't know, give him like motion blur, I guess. And maybe he doesn't even run that fast is my thing. But whatever, that's all besides the point. He dies, he gets fucking riddled full of bullets because apparently he's not that fast.
Well, that doesn't make sense really, does it?
No.
He's slower than a speeding bullet.
Yeah, he is slower than a speeding bullet. You're right.
But is he? Because when Hawkeye shoots the glass floor from under him,
he sees the speeding bullet.
I mean, he sees the bullet. He still falls to the floor, but he sees the bullet. Shouldn't he be able to walk around the? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. He sucks.
Pterodactyl or whatever his fucking name is, Pietro.
Yeah. Pietro Maximoff.
Pietro is not a good character.
No, he's not.
Wanda is also not a good character.
No, she's not.
Yeah, not particularly in this film. No.
It isn't until you get to Civil War and you learn more about her as a person. I think so. Here's the thing about the twins. Yeah. I think that they're one of the things in this movie that is the most pros and cons. You have Wanda established. She's obviously important to the rest of the saga. I learned to like her more earlier on, but I'd rather watch her in any of those other movies.
Yeah.
And then Pietro exists only to be a catalyst for Wanda to be more interesting. Yep. And that's all the cons. But the pros, I do think, is that they do add a new, and let's also include Vision in this.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to get to Vision.
They add a new flavor to this film. You're watching, 2/3 of this movie, you're watching the Avengers do their wombo combos, and then you get to the Sokovia fight, and bam, okay, there's new characters for them to work alongside. That's great. I also do think that what they represent in terms of their backstory is very interesting, is showing the impact of what, Tony Stark's military
past,
which has been explored in Iron Man and Iron Man 2 and such, but I'm continuing that thread and using it as the catalyst for these two characters and their want for revenge against the Avengers and how they are sacrificing themselves to Strucker's experiments. I think is all very good. But almost all of that is explored in expository dialogue. You do not see the sequence where they are trapped under the rubble until WandaVision. And like you learn about these characters, that they have this terrible past and they are interesting in this way through they talk in funny Sokovian East European accents.
Sometimes they do that.
about the fact that their past is more interesting than their present.
Yep.
And so that's really why they're pros and cons for me.
Yep. Vision is a cool what a cool character to introduce in this film, obviously. I remember wishing that they didn't reveal him in like the trailers before I went to go see this movie, because imagine if you're sitting there and you're like, well, you get that brief little flash of like his eyes opening when Thor has his Infinity Gem vision that is in this movie that we haven't talked about, but
Jesus,
it's
what
there.
A stupid fucking plot point.
Yeah, it's there. Thor has to have a vision about the future movies, but regardless, I like Vision. I think he's cool. You know, he is a Deus Ex Machina, as Abram points out. Let's make a guy that can beat the villain, of course. But I think Paul Bettany is good. I like all the makeup work that's done on him, all the VFX work that's done on him as well. Tucker pointed out that he's a very good, just like paramour of goodness and justice, and what is the path forward. I am a robot, and I was made to juxtapose the pure evil of Ultron. I'm the pure good. I am Vision. I'm the vision of the future. Stuff like that. I think it's a cool character to introduce in this film.
Yeah. Do you want to comment on the twins and Vision?
No.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, I think you guys basically said everything I would say. I think Vision's far better than the twins. The twins, you know, what it feels like to me is, I think about it this way: we got Black Panther and Spider-Man set up in about as much screen time in Civil War as we get here.
Mm-hmm.
But those are characters that you kind of come into the film with a pretty good understanding of, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, you see other versions of Spider-Man, you get what's going on with MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Do you really get what's going on with MCU Quicksilver? I don't know about that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think we needed more
especially
time
because that character is just nothing like anything that has been established in the comic. They delete the backstory. They can't reference mutants at this time. They just exist, and
they
dies.
are enhanced, Tucker. They are enhanced.
Enhanced in the field, guys. Go fucking watch out for the enhanced.
Yeah,
that sounds like a fucking line of dialogue from the Avengers game.
Absolutely. But I think that a Vision is where this movie also grabs my attention again. Is he sort of reflects this interesting, in my opinion, commentary on the roles of people with superpowers in this world, and his role as a Deus Ex Machina, but sort of wrestling with that. And he is pure good, but is that a good thing? Should he be trusted with this kind of stuff? Does he trust himself with this stuff? And of course, that is more fully explored later on when you see him in Civil War and Infinity War and WandaVision. But him being introduced here and sort of being a hot potato of between the team and Ultron, and his whole backstory of being the original, or, you know, quote unquote, the future body of Ultron, all this stuff, I think does make him a very compelling character. I think Paul Bettany's performance is very good, and finally seeing a face to the voice that you've been hearing since literally one of the first scenes
for 8
of
years,
the MCU.
7 years,
it's a really fantastic payoff that we don't get to see very often. That is, of course, still being worked on. We haven't seen the end of Paul Bettany as Vision. You know, I guess spoilers for WandaVision for Abram. But I think Vision is fantastic and definitely one of my favorite parts of this movie.
Any other things that you guys have in your notes that you want to say before we start to wrap up and give this thing a score? I have one small thing that it's really
is
quite
it your penis?
Language.
It's not, Tucker, and I'm gonna cut that out of the video just because you said that. I'm gonna cut you. I'm gonna mute your mic the entire time just because
you cut out every part of the video when Tucker's talking.
Yeah, I think so.
That's all the best parts of the video.
That's all the best parts. My one last thing is the Avengers team that really never was, and except for at the beginning of Civil War, which is, you know, Captain America, Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, War Machine, Falcon, and I'm missing one. Vision, yeah. What an interesting Avengers lineup team that is. And also goes back to my thing about how Captain America probably should have been the one talking to Wanda if he's going to be the leader of the Avengers team that she's on. But I digress. But yeah, just a really interesting note to end the movie on, that they don't really, they break up the Avengers in the next Avengers movie. So
The last thing I want to say is I was really hoping that there was going to be a second end credit scene where it's just Captain America saying "assemble."
oh, I see. Oh, Abram, thank you for reminding me. Abram, what's the end?
I
what's
watched the fucking credit scene, unfortunately.
Abram,
He
you gotta
referenced it.
stop. You
Oh,
gotta
yeah.
stop doing that. You gotta stop doing that. So this quiz thing that I sometimes forget to do works.
I would not have remembered. I would not. I gun to my head, I would have said the "fine, I'll do it myself" thing comes from Infinity War.
Yeah,
I would
Sure.
not say it was the post credit scene here. I would not have said that.
sure.
I would have said the
what
post
does-
credit scene would have been Hank Pym, or what's his name? Scott Pym.
Lang.
Scott Snyder.
Scott. That was gonna be Scott Snyder drawing quarter owls panels.
Nice. One last thing that I just thought of because of that post-credit scene. Did Thanos, was he hoping Ultron would wipe out the population of the Earth, or
That's a great
what does
question.
what does he mean by "fine, I'll do it myself"? What does he mean by that?
He meant that he means that one of his friends are gonna walk up the hill and get the gauntlet for him.
I suppose that maybe he means Loki, but that was years ago, man. What are you unless that's a flashback post-credit scene? Who cares? Whatever.
News
Who
travels
cares?
slow.
No, yeah, you're right. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that the Mind Stone has been activated, so maybe somehow he has a fucking little radar, boopity boop, fucking Dragon Ball radar that's like
Oh,
bing,
yeah.
bing, bing, and he's like, all right, if no one else is going to get this shit, might as well do it myself. But also, you're right. He presumably knew about it because he gave Loki the scepter. How did Loki get the scepter? I don't fucking know.
He gave Loki the scepter.
So yeah, so he had the Mind Stone.
No, what? Wait, no, because Loki got the scepter from that one
Oh, the
museum
other.
or whatever. Yeah.
Oh no. What are you fucking talking about?
You find
Oh no, he got the Tesseract.
He gets the
from
eyeball.
museum. What?
What?
Oh yeah, yeah.
He gets the medal. God damn, we're talking about fucking Avengers now.
We're talking about Avengers.
We're talking about a better movie.
Okay. Speaking of talking about a better movie, let's see how this movie compares to that movie in our grand ranking of all these films.
Oh Lord, Age of Ultron. You know what I'm saying?
Age of
Jeepers,
Ultron.
You know what I'm saying? Jeepers.
I got my score typed in. I don't
I
know
got a
about
score.
you fellas.
Good score.
I'll come up with one.
Okay.
Right about.
Yeah, right after you get the spreadsheet open.
Yeah.
right
there
about.
you
No,
go.
it's open. It's open.
Okay, it's open. Are we ready, folks?
I'm ready. I got a number.
Yeah.
Okay. A 3, a 2, a 1.
I wanted to build suspense and have my number not there for longer.
Oh, I see.
There you go.
Wow, well, that's a lot of suspense that was built. Thank you. In descending order, as we often go when we're talking about these scores, Abram gave this film an 8.1, Tucker gave this film a 7.1, and I gave this film a 5.7. We have a dissenter in our group.
Chill.
You.
Yes, it is me.
You're further
I-
points away.
I am
That's what
further
he said.
points away.
That's what he was. He was
Yes.
making a little joke there. It was a little,
I was-
it was a
yes.
little gaff.
I don't joke about Age
That-
of Ultron.
But for all you
We just
math
did.
for
For
all
like an hour.
you mouth doers out there, that averages out to a 7.0. That puts it at place number 11, above Iron Man 2 and below Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Very solid ranking.
Yeah.
Very solid. I'm happy with that. Frankly.
All I will say is that this movie is better than Avengers 1, but this does not absolve Joss Whedon of what he did to Justice League.
Oh, what about his crimes that he did? Probably.
It doesn't absolve him of those either.
Okay, good.
Allegedly, the crimes he allegedly committed.
Oh yeah, well.
Oh God.
Well, folks, we did it. We talked about Avengers: Age of Ultron, and now we're on to our everyone's favorite little shrinky-dink man, Scott Snyder. I can't wait to talk about him. No, of course, we're talking about Scott Lang, as portrayed by Paul Rudd in Peyton Reed's
Special guest
Ant-Man.
Paul Rudd.
Special guest Paul Rudd will be joining us on the show.
God, that'd be so much fucking fun.
God.
I really want to meet Paul Rudd in my day.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact.
Yeah.
For a while, Mark Ruffalo was summering in a place in Maine very close to me, and my friend who
Wow.
lived there got pictures of him at an oyster bar one time.
Nice. Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, we're not talking about him next week. We're talking about Paul
Talking about for a
Rudd.
while, actually.
Yeah.
No, Ragnarok. But...
Ragnarok.
That
Okay.
was Thor, right? Next week's Thor Ragnarok.
No. Next week's Ant-Man. All right. But yeah, I'm excited to go back to Ant-Man. It's gotten some slams on it recently with particularly ones leveled at Peyton Reed, the director, as he might be helming up
No.
Fantastic Four.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yes. But we'll have to analyze Peyton Reed's direction. We don't have to do that. We
I
don't
like
have to do that.
Ant-Man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I also
yeah.
like Ant-Man. It's a
I guess
fun
I like
movie.
Ant-Man. I don't really know
But
much about it.
perhaps we'll look at it with a bit more of a critical eye next week. Until then, thank you fellas for joining me. Thank you everyone for watching. And Backlog Boys,
What if we just chat? What if I just turn off the recording and just chat about this one?
yeah.
We'll just put up a community post saying that we privately discussed Age of Ultron.
Don't worry.
Yeah, we litigated the issue off air. We'll be back next week for Ant-Man.
Yeah.